Yeah, sure. So first is that we are a fairly young growth company. So we started about 3 years back. So we started serving the companies which were digital first. So what happened before that, we didn't really see that transition happen. So we are in the now state. That's how we started. So one of the big macro trend which we are driving upon is the customer's expectation of getting the parcel fastest, and that's also been accepted by the business leaders, and they have started thinking of supply chain as revenue enabler, because if you are not able to offer that fast experience, you can visibly see the sales volumes plummeting. And when you're able to have that delightful experience, same day, next day, 48-hour delivery timeline, for that cohort the revenue multiplies by a factor of 2 to 3x. In varies by different market segments, industry verticals, but that is definitely been accepted. So to get that, what has dramatically changed is first the need of getting inventory closer to customer, and to get that, the rise of various fulfillment model where we also get positioned into. So the first principle is that you need to have a distributed fulfillment model. If you have a centralized warehouse in say NCR or Bangalore, and if you are online, you are in various B2B marketplaces and all the channels, for a complex geography like India, you will be disserving a lot of the cohorts which are distant. So you need to be able to uh, keep your inventory closer in a distributed network. But then there is a big challenge because inventory and cash is limited with every player. So the second part is where to keep how much amount of stock, and that's where the planning intelligence comes in. So these are like two macro trends that we are seeing, and that is also creating two newer form of fulfillment. So as you mentioned, there used to be days of go down, then warehouses, now there's fulfillment center, micro fulfillment centers, dark stores. So
Yes.
that evolution is happening based on what customer finally is asking for. So yeah, I think there may be a lot of the movement that is happening is also what I feel is experimental and people are testing out. What my sense is that some industry vertical will find, say, when we talk specifically about same day delivery, it is probably not for entire market segment. Probably few verticals, say food and beverage and certain categories, will definitely see a large upswing in revenue for providing that. Fashion lifestyle, not that much. Some other vertical, not that much. So they may not opt for a dark store led fulfillment model, which some of them are testing around with. My sense is that that's not going to be a stable state. Some verticals will stay along with a traditional fulfillment model, and so there the transformation would not be that much. But yeah, I think that's what we are seeing positioned squarely in this transformation that's happening.
Interesting, because Masood, if I were to ask you, one of the things that was traditional and it never used to change as far as pharmaceuticals were concerned is that you have a friendly neighborhood pharmacist where the drugs are available, you go pick it up and come. But off late, you have the 1mgs and the pharmacies of the world come in, netmeds, who have kind of also changed the dynamics here. And in some extent, biosimilars, biopharmaceuticals, we are also having the concept of direct to consumer also as a channel coming up. Wellness Forever for example, has its own fulfillment center from which it is serving customers. A pharmaceutical company needs a world-class fulfillment center because drugs have to be kept under temperature controlled, etc., etc. How are you seeing the fulfillment centers, or rather the fulfillment centers, changing from a pharmaceutical distribution perspective? Because your own distribution models are now being opened up.
Yeah, I think it's very on a initial stage, because when we talk about e-commerce and this 1mgs and pharmacies and all, we are just at around 5 to 6% of the overall business.
Yes.
So a lot many things has to happen in this area. There are many regulations which has been put up into the play, and there are many hurdles which is coming, through associations and many other things. Because obviously they had a large chunk of distributors who were actually into this business and they were doing in a traditional way. So they are trying to object it, but now they are going to mix with this kind of online players. I'm very sure that very soon the delivery which was been talked about, within 1 hour, 2 or 3 hours. So this will be the distributors who are locally implanted into the system traditionally, but they can be useful through this online kind of business. The way you have maybe Blinknet or something kind of situation where a consumer is calling within maybe less than 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes the goods are the materials are delivering. The same thing should also be in pharmaceutical, which we are looking at. Instead of going for a chemist, searching for a medicine, online player can collaborate with this kind of medical stores, and automatically it can deliver the medicines wherever they need for. Because today also, when you're delivering a medicine on an online, it may take 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. There can be an emergency medicine for somebody who has actually forgot to take the medicine, maybe as for a blood pressure or for a diabetical kind of situation, where if he just on a online portal, he goes and within maybe 1 hour or half an hour, if he gets the delivery, I think that can be a better situation in pharmaceutical as well as the entire consumer setup for the pharmaceutical. So this is what I feel it. But let me recollect. I will just recollect 2 decades ahead before, because obviously when somebody was talking about old school book, I'm also from the same kind of school. So I think Safex is here, and I was a person. Let me just tell you, e-commerce and online portals and everything has come now. Just maybe 18 years or 20 years before, we used to deliver samples to the MRs.
Yeah.
And promotional materials is an important factors for the pharmaceutical company, because there is no other promotion activity which we do. We can't advertise, we can't do. So this was a very important activity. And traditionally, people used to send the samples and gifts and everything to the MR by road. And it used to take 30 to 40 days reaching to a destination from, maybe the center was in Mumbai, it was reaching to Srinagar, for example, or maybe Meghalaya after 30, 40 days. And the promotion which was been carried out for a month would have been totally into a haywire kind of thing, because somebody was receiving within 7 days, somebody was receiving within 40 days and 30 days. So a promotion activity which was actually conducted for the month of March, people used to get for the May, and somebody was to get in the month of April. But while during that time, I can proudly say that, I just sat with Safex at that time, and I called them a meeting saying that, I am, this is my requirement, and they also came with the kind of solution with a very minimal rate at that particular time. I'm just telling you, just 18 years or 20 years back. And we started sending direct samples through through Safex. And it took 7 to 15 days, maximum 7 days and minimum 7 days and maximum 15 days. And the same promotional material for the same month was reaching. We used to send, 10th of the previous month or 20th of the previous month. And all India, we delivered the samples for those particular month in that particular time. And that continued, and that became a practice in the industry. And today, every pharmaceutical industry is following the same practice. So there is a lot of scope in pharma industry, let me tell you. If you people, service providers or some kind of e-commerce, they sit with the distribution head and understand their requirement and see that how can you not only bring the cost, but increase the speed, make availability, plan their strategy, sit with their marketing, what they actually want. And we can really turn around many things, with this kind of e-commerce situation or a logistic partnership and everything. So this is what, I just wanted to tell. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Umesh, if I could ask you at this point, you come from a slightly different background. Okay. Food, therefore, perishable, but still you do have at least considerable warehouse presence across the country. How do you look at what is the role that you would like the fulfillment centers to live up to when it comes to products like yours?
So our products are highly, critical products into the temperature. We have frozen products which operate -18 and below, and chilled product which operate from 1 to 4 degree, and dry products. And our quality norms are so tight. I mean, if there is even a small deviation, we do not use the product actually. In fact, even after cooking the product, there is holding time of 20 minutes. We hold in cabinets. If the customer do not come within 20 minutes, we throw the product actually. We do not use the product. And as we are planning to go to small towns, our C-class towns, we are finding a lot of challenges in terms of ecosystem basically. We do not find well-established cold chain. We do not find well-established cold chain vehicles who maintain, who understands. So there is lot of attitude issue also. Like lot of flavor think I will switch off the AC for 1 hour, 2 hours I will switch on. So, but that does not works actually. It really spoils the product. So that way we have very, very limited, and we are working one of the best supplier from last 27 years. Whatever global help is required to set up the technology, we work with that. And now as we plan to go to small towns, first store comes, let's say we have gone to Bhilai, Raipur. So in small town, we have a big store actually. We put up a bigger cold room there, and that becomes as a hub store for other stores. So after 6 months or 7 months, another store may be coming. After in second year, third store may be coming. So this store will work as a hub. So as the number of stores will grow to the 2025, then we will think of having a depot there. So that way we work on. So, but we do not compromise in terms of quality. We have end-to-end service providers who does all the things, like he does the planning, he does the customer service, he do the depot operations, and he even takes the if any returns are there. So it's a integrated service. And if we give it to different stakeholders, then there will be chaos in terms of responsibility. So we take care of the control of the process. And in terms of even at the store also, if you go any outlet in India, you will find the product taste is same. So even though there is an attrition of around 40% in this industry, QSR industry at the store level, that is because of highly governed SOPs basically. We have standard SOP, and every time the product could to be cooked in same way. And so for small things also we have SOP. Even a small dry product or chilled product comes out from freezer, there is a shelf life tag is put up. In how many hours it has to be consumed. If it is not consumed, the rest of the product to be thrown. So that much care of quality we take it. So we find bit challenge in small towns, but over the period, I think we should be able to build up the ecosystem there. And now, companies are also scaling up, going to the small towns, and there are more players as the more competition comes. Like Domino's, KFC, they have gone to even very, very small towns. So that is helping us as a QSR industry to build up the ecosystem and leverage that system.
Ankur, if I were to come back to you. Now, the fulfillment centers are a part of the customer service excellence phenomenon that we keep talking. And since morning, we have been harping on excellence, and we also talked about collaboration. However, in the fulfillment center also has got a very crucial role to play when it comes to the service excellence part of it. Where are we when it comes to using the fulfillment center to its full potential? What are the gaps there, and what would you like the customer, not the consumer, the customer to trust you with?
So I think, first of all, it's very important to understand what part of the chain you're actually servicing through a particular fulfillment center, right? So if you're talking about from an e-commerce parlance, right? If you're talking about slotted deliveries, right? The way you would actually organize your fulfillment center, the level of automation you would put in, the level of tech you would put in, right? The amount of capex you would invest in, the amount of L&D you would actually, learning and development for pickers, packers, you would put in, is actually of a different magnitude, right? Versus you have a replenishment based instant delivery models where you're, let's say, replenishing a dark store, right? Again, the way fulfillment center would be designed would be slightly different, right? So it's very important to understand what, in terms of what category you're serving, what chain you're serving in terms of promise to the customer, and therefore design the fulfillment center basis that. In my experience, I think customers understand this really well, right? Though the level of automation as a 3PL service provider, what I would have wanted the industry to adopt, I still don't see that, right? And therefore maybe there is a certain threshold in terms of the volumes or the orders per day, going with which an automation will come into the picture. But I think there is a sweet spot which exists, especially in certain pockets of the country. If I talk about certain metro cities, where this can make a difference, right? And there are a lot of other factors where I think it's pipping in favor of automations. For example, labor costs, labor availability, right? So a metro city, for example, if I talk about Bombay, right? There is a use case for, instead of opening multiple fulfillment centers catering to X number of orders, you can actually go for a highly automated service center and fulfillment center, and there has to be a trust on the 3PL service provider to actually partner with him and deliver on it, right? I think sometimes I do see, that maybe the customer, from a customer's perspective, they do feel that, okay, whether a 3PL service provider will be able to provide that value or not, and therefore there is a little bit of an apprehension. But having said that, there are healthy discussions which I see happening in the industry where, in the previous section we talked about collaboration, right? So I think there is a healthy collaboration which is actually happening, because at the end of the day, customers are under cost pressure, right? I'm not talking about service excellence, because I think that's a given, right? So
Yes.
whoever is going to win on that particular parameter is going to take the cake. We all discussed about example of Amazon, right? So that's a given, right? Therefore, what becomes important is, from a customer's perspective, is therefore the conversations which need to happen, and data which needs to be shared, right? So I think capability exists on 3PL side to deliver on on a lot of solutions to cater to a particular market, and therefore these conversations which have started happening now need to end in in business for a 3PL, right? We've seen that in certain other areas. So for example, if I look at sort centers, right, or in some of the other categories of warehousing, we've seen that relationship already develop, right? Or if I don't talk about e-commerce, right, and if I talk about automotive industry, right, there's a healthy collaboration which exists between the OEM and the 3PL, right? And I think it's things are happening in the right direction. It's just that maybe the pace could have been far more accelerated compared to what it is right now.
Datta, if I could come to you, you are in a slightly different industry as such. You're also a marketplace for warehouses, right? How do you see, if you're looking at it from a few years back to now, what do you see the changes in the fulfillment center requirement which are coming to you from the customer side of it? And what is the kind of supply side you're seeing, and how do you balance that?
I would continue with Maksud that even I am an old school guy, but my company is just 8 months old in business. But I can tell you one thing, we started with, if you know, Bill-T numbers, then we came to docket numbers, then to barcodes, and now QR codes. So, we are getting the transition on. Identically, this industry which I am, sourcing warehouses, was actually dependent on, the agents and none, because it was highly unorganized. So, what you desire and what you get, there was a big gap there. Companies like StoreMart coming in, and a lot of companies now trying to get into this arena, we actually have bridged this gap. We are giving the customer what it requires. Putting on to the McDonald part also, going to C grade cities and D grade cities is a win-win, because of the rentals being so low. They don't need to go out and find their store can have a warehouse behind it itself. But can it be in Mumbai or Delhi? I wonder so. So, it's a very big transition happening. We used to, if you remember in the 90s, I remember we used to see those tin sheds which were called warehouses. Yes. Then we went to concrete warehousing, having a 10 feet height. Then we became more demanding, became 15 feet height. Today, we get a pre-engineered building which is 45 feet high. Okay, cold storages, there was nothing called a CO2 base, there was nothing as a nitrogen cooling base. It was air conditioned coolants, and there your cold storage is ready. Today, the world has changed. Everything has gotten so. I would rather tell you that we have become more scientific in warehousing part of it. Uh, Today, a cold storage also requires a lot of building in right from the base of the floor till the building coming up. Cold storages, we used to never take heights to 15, 20 feet maximum, which even pharmaceuticals would accept. But today, they are using heights till 40, 45 feet also. So, that's the disruption actually happening. I would also like to add in this that we were very, very behind in the 90s when it came to supply chain. People used to say US and China is 50 years. In 20 years, we have covered the gap of 50 years. We are actually on toes with them. We, though might be a step or two behind, but it's not very far away. Okay, nobody could think having a McDonald's at Rajpura because of the logistics. Today, I think you might think about Kashmir also. So, that's the difference, and that's how it's working.
Again, I would like to bring you into the discussion. If any one of you has a question on fulfillment, yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is, like presently, India's logistic is estimated to account 14% of the GDP. Like with 5G rolling out and in context with PM Gati Shakti movement, especially with the cold storage and with the pharmaceutical company, how are we looking up to the amount of profit generated and the sales revenue generated? What are the scopes and what are the future prospects you are looking in context with Gati Shakti and 5G rolling out? Because pharmaceutical and cold storage, they are perishable item. They have a life. So my question is.
I would like to speak about the food chain. So if you see the time we do harvesting of anything, so we have 30 to 40% wastage happens in India, okay, because of the high temperature. Meat, fruits, vegetables. So that wastage, definitely you can save it. And if you have used, Safal frozen IQF vegetables, basically the taste is same like fresh ones, and nutrition is also same. So one is customer to be educated to use the frozen IQF vegetables, and second, if we establish the cold chain to preserve those things, lot of wastage can be eliminated from the supply chain, which ultimately will reduce the cost basically, and the more value can be given to the customer. That's what innovation or renovation, I think, will happen into the food chain once the Gati Shakti projects rolls fully.
So I would like to add two things in this. First is 5G. It's a very different arena. So we cannot calculate and count on 5G as of today. You're sitting in Mumbai, you're great speaking about it. Can you speak the same thing in Raipur right now? So, we keep that away as of now, but Gati Shakti, of course, it is. Secondly, you said we are 14% of the GDP, but, we are yet very less because of the logistic challenges we face. You cannot have the same logistic programming for Chennai as well as Kashmir. So everything is a big challenge in India because of its geographical diversifications. You cannot match two cities in the same zone also at times. I'll give you the best example of Mizoram and Guwahati. So Mizoram and Assam both have drastically different climates. Both have drastically different building materials required. So Gati Shakti, of course, is helping us. 5G is not yet a question bar for us, but the way logistic is looking, of course, pan India. If you all remember, till a few years back, if you bought a Maggie in Leh Ladakh, you paid 2 rupees transportation charges. Yeah, today you get it at MRP. So that's a victory point for us.
Right, I think in the previous panel as well, there's a question around reaching pin codes, etc., etc. I think one of the points which I'm sure you would have also read is the amount of movement which is happening or transited from roads to railways. I think the phenomenal amount of work happening, and you won't be surprised e-commerce companies are leveraging railways in a big manner. Today you talk about Amazon, you talk about Flipkart. You would have seen some negative videos about it on the social media, but you know, in the last 5 years that I have been associated with the industry, from 100% road, that movement to railways. Cities like Raipur we discussed, right? We talk about Guwahati, for example, where getting through road was actually considered a nightmare. Now you have railways getting there, right? And to the credit of the government, I think the amount of investment which will happen out of this entire Shakti and the ULIP programs, the ULIPs which are going to come in, Unified Logistics, portal, which the government is talking about, it's going to be a game changer. The way we see as a 3PL. Again, another point which I wanted to add in terms of the earlier question around spaces, right? It's actually very interesting because while on the large warehousing footprint side, we've seen a lot of grade A developments happening, right? With FM2 flooring, heights, right? People talk about heat index, etc., etc. With the advent of micro fulfillment centers, there's a huge opportunity in terms of the right space. And the way our metros got built out, actually, there's no design intracity infrastructure which exists, right? That's where you had all those old rickety godowns or traditionally distributor owned sort of fulfillment spaces, if I can call that, right? But I think again that's one place where, as a 3PL, when I actually evaluate spaces for micro fulfillment center, if I have to do same day delivery for my customer, right, and he's given me, okay, this is the pin code where you need to be located because that's where you will be able to deliver on the promise to the customer. Getting the space is actually a very, very difficult task. And not only that, that fulfillment center is actually also a delivery station, right? And on the delivery side, with the EVs coming in, it becomes even more complicated because a lot of these spaces, in fact, will not have a valid commercial electricity connection. And again, it's a huge opportunity, a challenge as well as an opportunity, for this particular forum. If they can actually figure out answer, we as an industry will benefit quite a lot.
Anyone else would like? Yes.
Yeah, my question is to Umesh. You spoke about this tier 2, tier 3 cities where a lot of these handling of material becomes a challenge, especially the raw materials. So, what are the defects, etc., compared to a tier 1 kind of city where the SOPs are well established? And then what's the roadmap or timelines in terms of how do you get back to solving for those defect percentages or the waste in the system?
So in tier 2 or tier 3 city, so whenever new store comes, we go up with higher amount of cold storage, and we see the defect like in fries. Okay, fries. So it will be soggy actually. So you will not get that much of crispiness because somebody has violated the temperature conditions in somewhere. So we ensure that whether it is happening because of the product or because of the distribution. If it is happening because of product, it will happen in other stores also, right? And we trace back the defect to the factory. And if it is there, we recall all the stocks. And if it is a local problem, then we train that and for operations team. And we do very, very rigorous training in terms of like oil utilization, how to use oil basically, right? In fact, we recycle our oil for biodiesel basically. All the used cooking oil goes to the biodiesel factory and it gets converted into biodiesel and which is used in our vehicles. We ensure that there is no leakage of used cooking oil happen in the food chain. Not even for making soaps. Leave about the food actually. So that much of care of sustainability we take care of. And in fact, we buy all the fresh produce from the Global Gap certified farms basically. We work with farms in long term. And all our distribution centers are DQMP certified centers. In fact, even though we are selling chicken, so there is something called animal welfare actually, animal welfare. So the point, chicken is raised, how well you take care about the chicken unless it goes to the slaughtering plant. Even at the time of slaughtering, it should be taken well care. So that much of quality standard parameters we take care about it. So in tier 3 city, if any problem comes, we investigate whether it is local problem or it is a product level problem. So if it is a product level problem, we fix it from the factory side. If it is a local problem, we address it by training, and if any further infrastructure to be provided through that store, we provide the same and resolve it.
So I have a question on that, if I can. Right, I think you also mentioned that you face attrition challenges, right? How do you leverage technology to ensure that the person who's working at the restaurant becomes productive ASAP, right? As in, I don't know what's the time frame, but if I were to draw a parallel, right, in our core logistics business, right, if attrition is a big challenge here as well, right? And one of the things which we struggle with even as a 3PL, and I'm sure my customers as well, is that, okay, attrition has happened, I've got a new guy in place. How do I ensure that he becomes productive? Because if I spend 8 days, 10 days making him productive, for 8 days I'm actually paying him salary without getting work done out of him. And that's one place where there is technology which can be leveraged in order to ensure that the guy becomes productive in, if possible, within 1 day. So are there any mechanisms, technologies which you are using to ensure that these people become productive?
So in fact, if you see our value statement, we are a technology driven food company basically. So we are not just QSR, we are a technology driven food company, digital food company. So you will see a lot of training material online basically. Once any crew comes, normally crews comes, those who are either 12th pass or college going. So you have the option to joining our store as a part-time or maybe full-time. So somebody can join even for 4 hours. So but the hours are monitored very closely in terms of productivity, whether we are getting the design productivity or not. Normally people start working in 7-8 days, right? So there will be crew trainers in every store, 1 or 2 crew trainers who will take care of all the crews. And we leverage the technology in full extent in terms of training. So there are training modules. In fact, every employee who joins the company, he has to go mandatory 15 days training. Like in my role, I have gone for 15 days store training, making from burger, making from French fries. In fact, from crew to restaurant manager's role, I have to do part of my training. So that much rigorous training happens, and it is for everybody. Even any CEO joins from outside, he has to go through that training. And beauty of our system is the opportunities provided to the people. Even in our system, if you see historically, some guys has grown from crew to CEO level. So your education is not very important, whether you are MBA or IIMs or IIT. But if you are doing your job good, even though you started from your crew, you will get recognized and you will be, getting growth in your career. And attrition happens because of one is more demand into the market. Second is in terms of brand values. Once you get the certificate or a brand, there will be more value, your value. So that's how more attrition happens into the market. But we are able to happen. It's not only for us, it is for all the QSRs. So, but we handle it by means of proper training, proper SOPs, and we have one group called Restaurant Solution Group, which provides continuous support to the restaurants in terms of any new product comes. First, the training happens to the stores. 4-5 day training will happen. Then only new product will be launched. Recently, we have launched Big Mac actually in India, right? So Big Mac is coming after, in US, it has been from last more than 20 years. But recently we have launched here. So for any new product, our team goes with the rigorous training. So once we are satisfied, then only we launch the product.
Yeah, Harsh, if I could pick you on one of the aspects which I think differentiates a warehouse from a fulfillment center is warehouse essentially is a store, while a fulfillment center is a throughput center.
Right.
How do you increase throughput times? For example, I was talking to someone from Hong Kong, and he said that the time from order to dispatch for a flat screen TV during the Bachelor Day sale there was 2 minutes. That's an amazing
Yeah.
tat. What can we do about similar tats in India? And how will those things help the user?
Right. I think the one of the area, at least as warehouses transition into fulfillment center, and the unit level operations and also the complexity of SKUs, they have different uptake. So if you have to create combos and kits for a certain market segment, the turnaround time will be higher. If it is a apparel which just needs to be kept in a bag and just shipped out, the throughput is much different. So one of the things is, since in India it is still a very people centric operations, robotics have not come in because of the economic reasons, where uh, so robotic business case, at least in certain areas, it kind of becomes feasible, but still a very high people centric operation. So training becomes very important into this, because that's the in the mathematical equation of the throughput. Say if you look at the inverting operations, outward operations, or a return processing operations, what the throughput a staff at that area is able to drive, and then also play of technology into that, because when you're dealing with multiple SKUs and um the SLAs has to be very stringent, because you cannot send out short quantity or deliver incorrect parcels to someone. It needs to be done in a particular format. So getting that training done and setting that SOP, and to arrange that, even if you have a fulfillment center in a tier 2 city in say Madhya Pradesh or UP or some of the new locations, or you are driving it in the metros, the level of your SLAs should be consistent, and they cannot have a very high variance. So drawing to the McDonald's example, where quality of the product cannot vary in a tier 2 city versus what you had in metros.
Yes.
So equivalence of that would be very important. The industry is still very young, so a lot of people who are joining in, they are joining this for the first time, and there's a very high tech play into this. And the other factor is, when you talk about a modern consumer brand, they are selling everywhere. They're multi-channel in nature. They're selling on Meesho, Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, their own website, and each of these warehouses, each of these channels have their own cutoff timeline. So all these fulfillment centers that we are running are multi-wave. Amazon comes in at a pickup at 10, Flipkart at 12, Meesho at some point, some other channels will come in. So there are multiple shifts running. There are, each marketplace have their own SOP. You cannot put up a Flipkart tape in to accidentally do a Amazon parcel, and there's so many variables to consider. So I think technology play would be very important, but at the core of it, it is people running the fulfillment center operations, where a company like us have to make sure that the enablement from a training, a standardized SOP, and making sure that as the volumes expand to new regions and network expands, the quality does not have a very high variance. So,
Yeah, Masood, if I could pick you here, all that we talk about also requires, at least Umesh did emphasize on the bit of training, Harsh also spoke about. Are we doing enough to build the right capabilities across the operations that we have? Because if what we are seeing about is increase in technology, increasing demand, and as we said, the quality constraints, we need a different set of people coming in. What are we doing to create that kind of people? And also it helps retain. Attrition is also one of the things that get addressed there.
For us, the workforce is basically a medical representative in pharmaceutical industry. And when they talk about training, not from now, historically, the most stringent training which happens is through the MR. When he comes, when he joins a company, pharmaceutical company, as a MSc graduate or someone, he is not aware of what is the industry. There is almost between 15 to 20 days of training which he goes through, right from marketing strategies to product development to new product strategies to detailing to a doctor from that particular angle. And there is a standard policies which has been trained to every MR. And you will find not only with our company, most of the SOPs are very common in pharma industries. So they know how to detail. They have a visual aids and so many things. Now with the technology what we are talking about today, earlier there was a visual aid which was been there with in a hand of MR. Today he has an iPad when he goes to the doctors, and believe me, doctor doesn't give him more than 30 to 40 seconds of time when he goes and detail him, and that is a time when he has to catch up the entire from the doctors, attention from the doctors. So now with the technology, he can easily tell the doctor about the science behind the medicine, about the total what kind of products we are actually launching or what kind of products we have, and what are the things which has been there, along with the promotional materials. He only has 30 to 40 seconds. I'm talking about. In that thing, he has to flip all the products which is there on an iPad. And with this kind of, I think pandemic has taught us very lot of many things, on technology part, when doctors started using, some portal where the medicines and the technology was given to them. And, now it's almost every doctor is online. So with this kind of trainings, and with this kind of technology, even the pharma industry is now getting into a high-tech kind of situation, which will be very useful for the future, for the consumers and the patients and everyone. So that is where I would just like to tell about.
Yeah. Ankur, if I would take you there, we have two models. One is a multi-client fulfillment model, and second is a dedicated fulfillment center. Multi-client definitely has its advantages of cost, optimization, etc., etc. But there is also a problem with when it comes to processes, because in the same fulfillment center, you have multiple processes running. You also would then need to have commercial offerings, which will change. The commercial structures will change. Your operations would change. What are the challenges in running a multi-client fulfillment center versus a dedicated center? And what are you doing to enable these operations?
So, I'll be very honest, right? Multi-client fulfillment centers is a good concept. Whether it exists, I have my own doubts, right? But multiple clients in a single facility exists. Okay, there's a difference, right?
Yes.
And I think where we are right now, at least the way I see it, is that you have multiple clients who exist in the same building, each one of them running with their own SOPs, in some cases separate teams, right? The backend functions might be common, right? The admin or the security at the warehouse, etc., etc. But the core process teams which are there, they do have separate teams for separate customers, right? What is really required in order for a true blue multi-client fulfillment center to take off is actually on the tech piece, right? That's where, I think people like Harsh have been able to make a lot of difference. And especially with the advent of, D2C, for example, where a lot of brands which are trying to reach out to the customers directly, that's where we've seen a whole lot of multi-fulfillment center coming out in the true sense, because those customers can't afford technology. They're actually dependent on, companies like Harsh or Incref. I think that's the place where somebody who's not hosting the technology is actually the one who is adopting MFCs, right? And therefore, again, as a 3PL service provider, right, what is important for me is actually therefore to look at customers today who can't afford their own WMSs, right? Or who can't afford their own last mile technology, right? Or maybe they don't have the scale right now. They are the guys who are actually early adopters of MFC. How it will pan out over a period of time, especially, when the brands become big, right? They cross, my assessment is 100 crore run rate threshold. They actually that's the time when they start looking at a lot of customization. And the moment on the tech front you start moving from a solution to a bespoke, customized kind of a solution, these things, I think start to, I don't want to use the term fall apart, but it then
does.
becomes a little bit more dicey, right, in terms of managing the whole thing. And again, it's too early to predict where this entire space will go, but it's a very interesting space. And I think as a industry participant, I do keep my eyes, ears always open to see how this space is actually going to pan out.
That's if you could also probably throw some light on, how you've seen this evolution of fulfillment center demands coming to you.
See, being in this industry, I understand every warehouse is a fulfillment center. So it's a hub and spoke method, which it goes to the spoke, and identically, its amount and the quantity being transferred, that actually makes a big difference, and that's how the mode of transport also changes, and that's how mode of storage changes. With the advent of e-commerce, where I just heard it out that we don't have multi-user facilities as of now, because like every company has its own SOP to follow. But with companies like Amazon, Flipkart, they've got a universal SOP for all their sports goods.
Yes.
So if they're doing the warehousing for their sports good, it's a universal SOP. So this is helping us a lot. Today, when we see down for next 5 years, we will have more than around about 100 million square feet of warehousing, which will be totally fresh. And that is because the reach. Because I heard it in the earlier on panel that we don't need 10 minutes delivery. If somebody needs, we should pay for it. We don't need same day delivery. But if I see, Indian consumer is very insecure. Okay, if he's putting 10,000 rupees in a good which he's buying on e-commerce, he wants to get it ASAP. He can check it and he can say it's working or not working. Yeah, so that is the reason, these warehouses, which was a concept. I will give you a very, very, like apt example of warehousing in Mumbai. So if you go around Shivri and all, besides the old port, Mumbai port, those warehouses used to be the most expensive warehouses in the 80s, 90s. 2000, there was not a buyer for it. They were all empty, discarded ones. You used to get it for 8 rupees to 9 rupees. Cigarette companies taking it across and all. Okay, warehousing has shifted to Panvel, Vasai. Panvel rates started increasing. It came to Bhiwandi. Bhiwandi started, well, now Bhiwandi rates have started increasing. I just had a discussion with somebody sitting here. He's looking for a warehouse in Vasai now. So, it's shifting. Coming back to the warehouse at Shivri, today it's the most expensive warehouse because of these e-commerce and last mile deliveries. So, the need generates the storage part of it. So, I cannot say any kind of warehousing will be discarded in the next 25 years in India. Any kind of storage will just grow.
Yeah. In fact, one of the things I want to pick up, and this is more technology related, so probably Harsh, you should do this. I was speaking to Coke, and one of the things that they said is that their yard to gate out time was around 8 hours, and they managed to bring it down to half an hour using technology. All kinds of technology came into it. What are the exciting technologies that you're seeing being applied in warehouses? One, there is a lot of emerging technologies which have a lot of hype. You have a blockchain, you have a digital twin, you have a digital thread, you have all those kind of fancy terms out there, which is still not proven in terms of applicability. And there are also things which people can, because when you ask an Umesh or Ankur to bet his performance on a tech stack, they need some kind of assurance that 3 years down the line, the technology will exist. So what are the new things that you're seeing coming in that people should keep a track of? And where do you think they should put their money?
Sure. Yeah. At least, as you rightly pointed out, so there are a lot of unproven technology applications. So there are a lot of solutions finding problems in the warehouse also there. But lately, what we are testing out, and something really exciting is also in the AI field, where Google, I think just a day back also released an API where all the products that are kept in the shelf, you can scan them and keep it in your data repository. And at any point in time, so the cycle count challenge which is there in the warehouse, the platform says these SKUs are this much in the FC, and then you have to do physical counting of it. So through AI, you can have a very near accurate view of how much stock is kept where, and the through AI and machine learning, you'll be able to determine the counts. So I think that's one real practical application. Uh, I think automation will pick up in certain context, in certain use cases, say micro fulfillment use cases where the throughput for FMCG and yeah, the goods which needs to be delivered in 10 minutes, so they need to be packed in a certain timeline. So they're like very proven examples. So there are quite a few company which have been doing that very successfully with no manual intervention. It goes to the right, uh, does the complete picking, packing, and gets it to the station and packs it. So there are like some micro fulfillment examples which have been executed. But again, there are parts of it from a business economy, economics of it. Does that work out? Because eventually customer has to pay for it,
Yes.
the entire piece of it. So jury's still out on some of these things, but I feel some of the applications will directly solve a real practical warehousing challenge. So these are the like the two problems which I feel are the from a technological angle within the warehouse where the use case will be solved for.
Ankur, if I could take the same question to you, there are a number of warehouse technologies which are there. Harsh did talk about AI, ML based solutions. Uh, though AI, ML is technically a very old solution, it's a 40-year-old technology. It looks very new for us today. But some of them, like a blockchain or a digital thread, we still don't even know what that animal is about. But we are all talking about it. Every technology seminar has a thread, and tomorrow probably an envelope will come. But what are you looking at in technologies, and how are you evaluating that whole piece of technology? Because for you, that is also vital for your customer services.
So actually, you break down the technology into two pieces, right? One is the software-driven technology, right? That's where you talked about
Yes.
AI, right? And then you have the automation-related technologies, right? He briefly mentioned about, the MFCs, for example. We had a couple of use cases evaluated where we had, instead of a person actually running around the fulfillment center picking orders, you actually get,
Goods
the
to man.
goods to the person, right? Now that is fairly established technology, right? I think,
Yes.
will it work in the Indian context? Some places yes, some places not, right? Today you don't have the flooring for, in a lot of places we actually don't have the floors, right? If I talk from a MFC perspective,
Yes.
to actually deploy the robots to get the shelf to the pack station, right? Now, are you going to actually invest in the floor and then invest in the technology? So, like this, I think various questions need to be answered, and it is purely use case to use case basis, right? Where you actually solve location to location. In fact, it's actually that micro. It goes into that micro level where you're able to figure out, right? Or sorting technologies, for example. Again, pretty, I think pretty standard technologies, I would call them. But the level of adoption in India, depending on whom you're speaking to, will be different, right? Uh, so so on the again, going back on the software side, this is where AI ML, while as a technology existed, but how it is getting leveraged again is a super duper use cases actually evolving over there, right? So in Mahindra Logistics, for example, we run a program called as Catapult, right, which actually invites a lot of new age companies to showcase their technologies, and it's pretty mind blowing in some of the use cases which actually people come up with, right? So in e-commerce context, for example, right, uh, the more and more it is becoming marketplace driven, it's very important to understand the weight and the dimension of the packages, right? Now, how do I actually get in AI ML into that, right? How do I use very, very high optical resolution solutions to actually scan the packages? Uh, in fact, as great as detecting the any damages inside, right? To actually arrest any uh, sort of bad shipment coming into the warehouse itself, right? I think multiple things are happening around technology side, right? So again, the question is, when will it scale up, right? I think that's the bigger answer. I think technology exists, right? It's just
That's where it is. Yeah.
It's not affordable also in India as of today. So, when we talk about tech, first thing comes in the big time. If I go to a TCS or something, they're going to blow me off. Right, getting a normal app in place with some little bit of AI and ML actually charges 4 times more what I would have paid in US or in Europe, though the developers are sitting here in India. Yeah. So, everything we have the capability. You just spoke about blockchain. So I would like to add blockchain was made for crypto. I heard, then I was told blockchain is very good for supply chain. Actually, blockchain was made for supply chain and then crypto got in. Yeah. But how many of us use blockchain? Because the kind of servers and kind of the demos we require, it's actually crazy. It's very expensive. Come to SAP, it's not even cheap even now, but though it's a small, old technology. So, the major problem what I foresee is affordability also.
Yeah, just to add it, previously I have also worked in 3 FMCG companies. So, if any time you take the proposal to the management, you are unable to justify the ROI on the technologies, right? And even we have seen a center of one automation company who makes uh, butlers. Basically, butlers are the robots. Basically, they go and pick and do the automation operations basically in the warehouse. In terms of at that time, it was cost was coming 3 to 4 times higher than what we were doing. In most of the automation solutions I have seen, we got a pushback from management. The project is not giving ROI. So let's wait technology to mature. Once it is doable, we will do it.
so again, my experience, I think pretty much consistent, but I think the way we evaluate technology also needs to change, right? I'll just give you a classic example, borrowing from transportation side, right? Now, if you talk about ADAS in commercial vehicles, right? People will say, "Arey, why are you spending 80, 90,000 putting up those devices, right? Driver tod tad ke fek dega, ya, it will not work, etc., etc." But the moment you actually put a lens of, by the way, once in a year that one debit will come to you, right, which will eat up 10 lakh rupees, suddenly that 80,000 actually starts making a lot of sense, right? And again, as I said, there are multiple use cases which keep evolving, and you keep evaluating these use cases from from different lenses. You actually get some, hit actually a sweet spot where you're able to really look at, okay, can I actually now look at scaling this up, right? And again, my urge to each one of you would be to evaluate technology from uh, multiple perspectives. Don't just look at it, okay, that I'm putting in so much so and so investment, etc., etc. I think you need to look at it from an outcome perspective on how does it change. I think same goes. I think transportation is a classic example where we're seeing a lot of good use cases coming forth, right? EV, for example. Again, people say EV is very expensive, right? Compared to if I take a three-wheeler ICE based versus a three-wheeler EV. But again, the way if you actually change your paradigm, you will see that EV does make a lot of sense, right? I know there are a lot of challenges in terms of adoption, blah blah blah, but I think at least it's as a use case, it's got established. It's just now taking it to a level of scale where you'll be able to even get more benefit from an economies of scale perspective.
In fact, one of the things that I have at least observed when it comes to cost, there is this misplaced conception that technology is going to be costly. That's primarily because we compare apples with oranges. If you put the mistakes that a human makes into the cost of the human, then probably you will find a different answer there. And then probably you send something to Hyderabad instead of Lucknow, and getting it back to place, the whole cost of that. Currently, it is booked under a different head. You put that back onto the human head, then probably you will start saying that technology is not that expensive. Probably I need it today. The problem with us is that we all look at our accounting system is so archaic that it doesn't capture cost at the right place. We allocate it differently and we live in a fool's paradise that because we have got so many people, people are cheaper, so let's throw people at it. Probably technology. And again, beginning of the shift to end of shift, how does that dynamics work out? Most of the time, your business picks up during the end of shift when the people are tired. More mistakes.
I have seen a lot of advantage of control towers in our system. Pan India, we can see what vehicle is running, if there, what is the temperature of all the zones the product is carrying, and if the vehicle is not moving from last 4 or 5 minutes, so immediately from the control tower I can call the driver. What's the issue actually? And if there is any breakdown, I can send another vehicle. What kind of breakdown is there? So it helps me especially for my kind of supply chain actually. If there is a breakdown, if I am unable to help, the full product goes for the toss. So that much of write-off I can save actually with the help of the control towers, and I can plan much better. And in fact, I can plan the small backhauls also. Utilization I can plan much better in terms of the cost. So that's what the technology advantage I have seen in my industry.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been wonderful having you. And my clock is telling me that zip. So thanks for staying back and sharing your views. I would like to present you with a small memento. Thanks, Ash. Come out. It's easier out. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Last.